I'm Bob Brill. He's Erik Kramer. Welcome to Kramer and Brill, a fantasy football podcast, and now a video cast as well. You can hear the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, Radio.com, and wherever you get your podcasts. And now we're on Megaphone through the C-Suite network. You can also see the video cast on YouTube by going to my Bob Brill YouTube channel or by finding the links for all of this at kramerandbrill.com. That's the easiest way. See it right there at the bottom of your screen. kramerandbrill.com. Now, during the offseason, each week we'll be taking a look at each NFL team as they prepare for the draft and the upcoming year. We'll do that with local reporters who cover those teams to get their perspective. This week, we're joined by Jim Barry, main sports anchor of CBS4 in Miami, who covers the Dolphins. Jim, thanks for joining us here.
Thank you for having me, and it's good to reconnect with Erik Kramer. I don't know if Erik remembers, but way back when he was a quarterback for the Chicago Bears, I covered him when I worked for CBS in Chicago. In fact, Erik, I thought of you because I was listening to some sports talk guys from Chicago in Super Bowl from Radio Row, and they were all crying the blues about, we haven't had a good quarterback in Chicago ever. I mean, what about McMahon? Well, yeah, but not McMahon. I said, well, wait a minute. Don't be sleeping on my man Erik Kramer, because as I recall, Erik, when I was up there, man, you had a heck of a year for the Bears. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you threw for like 30 touchdowns and a bunch of yards. Am I right about that?
You know, I think, Bob, now would be a great time to switch the focus of this podcast onto what Jim just brought up. Yeah, we had a good season. 95 was pretty good. Yep, offensively.
Erik still holds the Chicago
Thanks for bringing
Bears.
that up, by the way.
He still holds the Chicago Bears passing records, by the way.
Well, there you go. See? So I'm going to have to hit up my guys in Chicago and say, man, don't be forgetting about our boy Erik.
There you go.
I appreciate that.
A couple of years ago, we were talking about when they drafted Trubisky. And I asked Erik early in the season if he was going to, if Trubisky, since we're in a different era, this all passing era, and 3,000 yards is a goal, but now guys are passing for 4 and 5. And I said, are you going to congratulate Mitch Trubisky if he breaks and when he breaks your record? And he said something effective, only if he sends me tickets to get there.
I feel you on that, Erik.
Yeah.
But tell us, this was kind of a good season for the Dolphins. You didn't get to where you wanted to be, but only one team does. But recap a little bit of the season for the Dolphins.
Listen, I thought it was a fantastic season for the Dolphins, quite honestly, because this was year 2 of the rebuild under Brian Flores. And quite honestly, we thought the Dolphins at best would be a middle-of-the-road team, feisty, but building on 6-10 from the year before, which we thought was fantastic considering how they had started the year before. And what do you know? The Dolphins won 10 games. Dolphins went 10-6. And if you remember, during the middle of the season, they were the hottest thing going. They won 5 games in a row. And it came down to the last week of the season. And had they won, they would have made the playoffs. Unfortunately, they went to Buffalo and got 56 hung on them by the Bills. But all in all, when you consider everything the Dolphins went through and the fact that they switched quarterbacks and went to a rookie quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, kind of in midstream after the bye week to get him some seasoning, I thought the Dolphins had a very encouraging season. So I think the feeling here in Miami is that the future is bright.
I like you, Jim. I go back to week 1 when they got just pummeled by New England. And I thought, shoot, after that game, where's Miami going? But New England's going to the Super Bowl. And that obviously didn't turn out to be the case. 2 teams actually flipped. And I thought Miami, I was so impressed with them, especially Brian Flores being such a defensive mind and bringing a great defensive attitude to the Dolphins. What do you see as potentially their next step or where this team can improve upon? Obviously, I think they've got a great defense now. In what other areas, either defensively or offensively, what can this team do to make that next step?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. Offensively, they've got to catch up to the defense. I mean, the defense is terrific. Xavier Howard, the cornerback, Pro Bowl caliber, at 10 interceptions, and he's really the star on that defense. But they've got a lot of really, really good players on defense, and I think they're only going to get better. The challenge is for the offense to pick it up. And, the company line is that they're going to stick with Tua as their quarterback. But of course, there've been all these rumors swirling that Deshaun Watson wants out of Houston, and it makes perfect sense for the Dolphins to trade for him. And if they were to make that happen somehow, wow, I think people would look at the Dolphins and say, hey, man, they're there right now. They're not saying that publicly, Erik and Bob, and I'm not sure that they will, because they have proclaimed already that they believe in Tua going forward. And so let's take scenario one. If they stick with Tua, then they're going to go out and get some targets for him to throw to. They're going to look, his buddy Devontae Smith from Alabama is going to be sitting there probably, and he was so tantalizing, and we saw what he did in the national championship game. But there's a bunch of other receivers, even if he's gone, that they could go after. They got to get speed on offense. That's the bottom line. They're too slow on offense. They got receivers who, you know, run 15 yards, turn around and wait for the ball, and that's not the way that offenses, you know, work today in today's NFL. So they got to get speed on offense. They got to get a more reliable, consistent running game. I think they recognize that. And defensively, look, they had got a lot out of their pass rush this past year, but I wouldn't be surprised if they even look to bolster that even more, because Brian Flores, as you mentioned, a defensive guy, believes in getting a heat on the quarterback. And if he does, the Dolphins secondary, I think, can play with anybody. And so if you bolster that pass rush and have quarterbacks putting the ball up for grabs more, I think the secondary is good enough to really take advantage.
You know, the cap space this year is so low compared to previous years. Do the Dolphins have the cap space for somebody like Watson?
Oh, listen, they'll make room for him. Trust me. I think the challenge would be not so much in the cap space, because I think if they were to pull off the trade now, year one, it wouldn't hurt them that badly. The challenge would be, how much would Houston want in return? And so if you get into a situation where Houston says, hey, look, well, give us Xavier Howard and your two number ones and a number one next year, and we give you Deshaun Watson, then I think the Dolphins would go, that's too much. So, but yeah, they've got the money and the wherewithal and the space to make it work if they want.
Yeah, I was looking at Tua, you know, over the course of the season. Obviously, you said the last game of the season didn't go well, and it didn't. But I thought all the way through, he, to me, showed a lot of progress, a lot of good decision making. Didn't have great numbers, but they didn't put a lot on him to put him in that position, so to speak. As a rookie, I think that was a good choice by them. Let the defense win some games for you. And it seemed like every single week, it was somebody different offensively. A receiver here or there would come up and make a play when they had to. Gesicki turned out to be a great red zone threat. I'm wondering if offensively, if they could, you know, what pieces are missing? Is it a blocking tight end? Is it a more consistent running back? You mentioned receiver early on. It's just maybe Devontae Smith or somebody else like him. You know, is there anybody that kind of names keep popping up as the one or two names that kind of stand out as, whether it be free agency or via the draft, and a nice addition or two for the Dolphins?
There've been a couple, and first, let's go back to the University of Alabama. I mean, look, if you keep drafting Alabama guys for your team over the next several years, you're going to be all right.
Right.
You know, so Devontae Smith keeps coming up, and in fact, Smith was asked about that at the Senior Bowl. He didn't work out there, but he was there just hanging out, and he admitted that he and Tua, you know, have talked about the possibility of hooking back up. There is some concern about him because he's kind of skinny, only 170 pounds, and so you wonder if he would hold up. But another guy named that pops up a lot is Jamar Chase from LSU, who's bigger and is fast. Now, he opted out, so we haven't seen him in a while, but he's got all the physical tools. And then you go back to that running back situation, and the running back from Alabama, man, his name escapes me, but the guy, you know what I'm talking about, who jumped over the guy.
Yeah.
What's that?
Najee Harris.
Yes.
Yeah.
Man, when folks saw that, they're like, "Ooh, the Dolphins need a guy like that."
Right. Or even maybe Sermon, right, from Ohio State.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Look, Myles Gaskin was a pleasant surprise for the Dolphins at running back before he got hurt, and because he was a 7th-round pick last year out of Washington, and next thing you know, he's starting, even though they had signed Jordan Howard and the guy from San Francisco who didn't really give him a lot.
Yeah.
Right, Matt Breida. Right. So I think they feel they need a big, solid, reliable running back to take more pressure off the Tua. The one veteran receiving name, guys, that I hear thrown about is Allen Robinson, who, you know, has had some good years, of course, with the Bears. And there's talk that, you know, he'll be looking for greener pastures. And so he might be a good fit here. So those are the names that I've been hearing so far. And as for blocking tight end, I think they're pretty happy with the tight ends they have right now, because Gesicki and Durham Smythe, And there's another guy they brought in from Chicago that they've, I think, proved to be a pretty effective group so far.
How are they looking in the free agent market? I mean, you guys got more than one pick in the first round. Like number 3, number 18. I don't know if you even have another pick later in the
Yeah, they
round.
got 4 picks in the.
4 picks.
They got 4 of the first 50.
Yeah. So I mean, that's some definite trade advantage there. Have they been looking at the free agent market as far as maybe a running back or some other situation?
Haven't said that yet, but my gut tells me that the Dolphins want to keep building through the draft because look, if you hit on guys in the draft, it doesn't cost you as much for a number of years, right? Whereas you go out in free agency and spend big, and then all of a sudden, that, like you said, that cap space dries up, and then as your younger players become stars, you don't have the money to pay them. So I would suspect that they are thinking more about filling their needs through the draft, especially with the skill positions. And I think, that's kind of a discussion that some of us have had down here for the past couple of years. And so far, looks like that's what the Dolphins are doing. That they wanted to solidify the trenches first, the D line and the O line. They did that by and large, and then they want skill positions next. And when you start spending free agent money on skill positions, man, that money goes pretty quickly in free agency. So I got a feeling that they'll be looking more in the draft in that regard.
Yeah, I like, the whole thing, obviously, the year before was what teams were going to tank for Tua, right? And so obviously, I think they made a great pick in getting him, but he also, I think, needs to take that step himself in terms of being a little bit more consistent in terms of anticipating throws and finding, quickly the right guy to go to, whether it's man coverage or zone, being able to look off a defender if it's zone and fit balls in, just really to keep drives going. They don't have to be great 50-yard bombs. Even 7-8-yard throws that turn into second and twos can be great to keep the drive going. What do you see, if anything, in terms of Tua and his advancement in this league as being necessary?
Well, first of all, I agree with you, Erik, 100% that the thing that impressed me most about Tua this year was up here. I think that he's very smart. He doesn't get rattled, and which, as you know, is very, very important. So he's not going to panic there. I think physically, he wasn't 100% coming back off of that major hip surgery, and he admits that he wasn't satisfied with everything in his rookie year. He spent so much of the offseason just getting physically right. This year, I think will be different because he can spend the whole offseason just focused on football. And I think that's going to be a tremendous advantage for him. But I agree with you. I think that, look, there are people here in Miami who looked at him and then they look at Justin Herbert, who was drafted right after him, say, wow, did we get the right guy? Because, Herbert lit it up with the Chargers. But I don't think that's a fair comparison. I see some Steve Young in Tua. A guy who can move around. And Young was a better runner, I think, than Tua, but Tua's not afraid to take off. But he's really smart. He throws a good football. He throws a catchable football. And to your point, he's got to learn how to throw guys open. And I think Ryan Fitzpatrick was great in teaching him that and letting him see that. And I think, honestly, those games where Tua struggled, where he got benched, and then Fitzpatrick went in and lit it up, man, that was the best
medicine
way that he could learn, because he could say, oh, wow, it's the same team. He's throwing to the same receivers, and all of a sudden, he's hitting them. So I think that he will learn from that, and I think he'll make great strides going forward. And I think Brian Flores believes that too.
If Tua doesn't start off real strong, is there a quarterback controversy down there?
Well, no, because I'm not convinced that Ryan Fitzpatrick will come back. He's made it clear that he, look, he got a taste of playing. He was honest that he wasn't happy about being benched, and he sees that there's a little turnstile going around and quarterback around the league. So I'm thinking that Fitz is going to be will be elsewhere next year. And I don't think look, the dynamic this year, no preseason. Tua, getting in to play, he was just grateful to play, honestly, and he respected Fitzy so much that there was no controversy. Next year, I think the dynamic would be a lot different if Fitzpatrick came back. So that's a good question. If Fitzy's gone, and now you're really staking your future with Tua, you got to get another quarterback, and you got to get a younger guy, and maybe that younger guy would be more competition in terms of taking the starting job and running with it if Tua isn't the man. So that's going to be, to me, as interesting a decision as any that the Dolphins will have to make. What do they do with that roster spot at QB if Fitzy goes elsewhere and they don't trade for Deshaun Watson?
I like the comparison you made there to Tua and Steve Young, because I think Steve Young played. I thought he was the best quarterback playing when I played. That's mostly through the '90s, and he was, he didn't start out. You go back to his days with the LA Express and even Tempe Buccaneers. He was not the Steve Young that ended up with the 49ers. Watching from a guy like he did behind Joe Montana, playing for Bill Walsh, and obviously, Tua, I think, benefited from being both in and out of the lineup last year. And if he stays in the same system, obviously, Brian Flores has made, I think, a great foundation for that team moving forward. If he can stay in that system, and I think the comparison is well made that, he reminds me of him too. Accurate, not afraid to move around the pocket, has some skills movement when he does move around. And like you said, I think Steve Young wasn't built in a day. Tua's not either. But I think he's got room to grow and is moving in that direction.
Yeah, and to your point, Erik, about the same system, interesting decision the Dolphins made is that Chan Gailey was the offensive coordinator last year. He left, he retired, or I guess he re-retired. And the Dolphins have not hired a new offensive coordinator. Instead, they're going to use two guys from the staff last year, the tight ends coach and the running backs coach, George Godsey and Erik Studesville. So that, I think, really is a further indication to me that for the moment, they plan to stick with Tua, keep him in that system, let him grow with these guys who he's comfortable with.
You might know this. You might remember this. But from those days in Chicago, Erik Studesville was on that staff with the Bears for a couple of those years. I think he came in as either quality control. I know he helped out with the running backs there for a while, but he's been around some places. And is a sharp guy, I believe. And I think, obviously, has been a great influence so far there in Miami.
Yeah, absolutely. They really seem to have a great chemistry here, guys. And I think, look, Brian Flores, you talked about how he's inspired confidence. He has really, the players have really bought in to him. And it's a tough balance to strike when you're a young coach, when this is your first job as a head coach. And when you come from that Belichick tree, so you're like no nonsense, but you're also a coach who embraces the players. And, there was a game this year, the Cincinnati game, and Flores thought that they took a couple of cheap shots at Jakeem Grant, the punt returner. And man, the second time that happened, he went out on the field and coaches were having to hold him back. Dude, those guys would have run through 20 brick walls for Flores after that, because it really indicated to them that he really cares. And his decision with Tua, he says, you know what, I treat him the way I treat my own sons. And, you just don't get that kind of sincerity, I think, because there's so much pressure to win. And guys feel that, look, this guy wants to win. They know that. And they got to be committed to the process. But he's committed to my success, and he won't play favorites. Look, if I prove it in practice, day in and day out, I'm going to play, and that goes a long, long way. And he's done a great job in building the right kind of trust, I think.
I got to think your fan base down there is really excited for this coming season.
Do I think they're excited?
No, I said I got to think that they are.
Yeah, look, the quarterback thing is a overarching thing. Look, we've had this Dan Marino hangover for years and years. I mean, when you've seen that kind of dazzling show, and then you've seen these guys come and go. And when they drafted Tua, man, people were like, "Yeah, we got somebody. All right." And so now folks want to believe it. I think the fact that the team was so much better so quickly, and this Deshaun Watson thing pops up out of nowhere, Now folks are thinking, maybe we should, change the game plan. But as you guys know, the Texans are saying, well, we're not going to trade him, even if he wants out. Now, whether or not that changes, who knows? And if the Dolphins get in the mix, who knows even more? I think that whichever way it goes, fans here feel that the Dolphins are heading in the right direction. They believe in the coach. They like the young talent. They love that the Dolphins have a defense. Just want to make sure we got the right quarterback.
Well, I think you're right. You got the right defense, and that's where, that'll travel wherever you go, right? I mean, you got a defense that'll show up week in, week out. It's like, as they showed this year. I mean, they turned it around and came from really, I wouldn't say less than zero, but they didn't look good that first week. And then, bam, it just was on. And they really could have beat the Chiefs, destroyed the Rams, and had some signature wins there that you can really build off of. And obviously, I think, like you mentioned, Brian Flores has started a culture there that's going to be there quite a while.
Yeah. The Arizona game, too, was exciting for him, too. That great, exciting win at the end. I thought that was Tua's best game, where that's when I saw, okay, they're on the road. You're down, I think, 10 in the fourth quarter. And this rookie comes in and plays and was fearless. I'm like, okay, you got something there. So I think that they recognize they got to build on that. But, you can't have the same kind of player, at running back, Myles Gaskin, when he went down, Salvon Ahmed, who, by the way, is another University of Washington product, basically the same running back. Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, they're two starting receivers, basically the same guy. So, you need guys who can stretch the field. I love Jakeem Grant, but he's about, yay big. And, he's, look, there's only one cheetah out there. Tyreek Hill is is a breed apart. So I think the Dolphins recognize that, you've got to have a team with some speed that forces mistakes. And that the speed is so respected that it opens things up for guys, all across the football field. And so that, I think, is what you're going to see the Miami Dolphins do. And if they get that, look, the Dolphins are going to be a force to be reckoned with. But, look, they got to keep up because the Bills are going to be around. That's a good, solid, well-balanced football team. And losing this year is just going to make them hungrier. And, the Patriots with Belichick, they may retool quicker. We don't know what's going to happen with the Jets. But I think the Dolphins understand that, you talked about week 1 against New England. To me, Buffalo beat them badly in Buffalo, or beat them badly here, destroyed them in the final game of the year. So I think the Dolphins understand, look, in the AFC East, that's the team. We got to be better than these guys if we want to get where we want to go.
Jim, I want to thank you very much. This has been fun and tremendously informative, and been looking forward to it, and I'm glad you could join us.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you guys. And I think that you guys are out in the West Coast. I think the Super Bowl next year is in LA, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So, I'm thinking if the Dolphins get this thing turned around, we'll be out there in LA covering the Dolphins in the Super Bowl. And so, Bob, you can present your fantasy football trophy then, and Erik and I can talk about old Chicago times. That'd be perfect.
There you go.
I'll say you look a lot more comfortable now in the warm climate of Miami than back up in Chicago. And hopefully you guys will be playing next year against the Rams, maybe. Who knows?
I think that's a distinct possibility.
Team.
Yeah, Rams made a good move. I like that move. So
I do too.
That would be cool.
And I'm not even going to mention my Steelers guys, so we'll just because Erik will give me.
I mean,
about that.
look, I love Roethlisberger, man, but dude, at some point you got to move on.
Yeah, it's $40 million against the cap, so it's either renegotiated or he sits this year, or calls it quits. So we'll see what happens. But
yeah.
Jim Barry, main sports anchor at CBS4 in Miami, joining us. Each week, we will visit a different NFL team and talk with local experts, reporters about that team and the draft and its future for the upcoming NFL season. A new team each week, so be sure to join us again next week. And there you have it, Kramer and Brill, a fantasy football podcast, and now a video cast as well. You can hear the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, LipsumRadio.com, and wherever you get your podcasts. And now you can also see the video cast on YouTube by going to my Bob Brill YouTube channel, or by finding the links for all of this at kramerandbrill.com. That is the easiest way. For Jim Barry, Erik Kramer, and myself, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.